Welcome back, everyone. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to make simple map books using the Data-Driven Pages tool in ArcGIS. This tool allows you to use a single map document to zoom into specific areas of your map and create much more detailed outputs for those areas than would be possible if you're showing just one overview map like we're looking at here. To demonstrate this tool to you, I'm going to use a real example from my work. This map is taken from a series of maps that my office produced for the United States Forest Service containing information about fish species ranges, basically just where we believe the fish species are located on the Forest Service lands. So in the green, you can see the Forest Service lands, and those are labeled. And in the yellow and red and in this light cross-hatching here, that's fish species range information. The details of those range locations aren't important for this demonstration, but what you do need to know is that there are 18 national forests in California, and they wanted to know for each forest which fish species were on their land and where. In this case, one map like this isn't particularly going to cut it. This is a nice overview map demonstrating where this fish species is, but it's really hard to tell where it is on each national forest. So that's where Data-Driven Pages comes in and helps us make a map book for them, where we have a page for each national forest that shows this range. So to turn on Data-Driven Pages, I'm going to do what I do for lots of tools in ArcGIS. I'm going to right-click on the blank spot in the toolbar here and select the Data-Driven Pages tools. And if I click right here, that's the setup of Data-Driven Pages. And what I need to do is click Enable Data-Driven Pages. And by default, in this case, it just kind of guessed and it gave me US Forest Service lands. And that's the layer that I want to use. But overall, we need an index layer. And what it's going to do is it's going to take a look at every feature in that index layer, and it will zoom to that feature for each page in my map book. So since there are 18 features in my US Forest Service lands layer, it's going to make me an 18-page map book where it zooms to each one of those features. I can also select a name field for the pages and a sort field. So I do want forest name to be my name field, but under sort field, I think I want to sort it alphabetically. So I'm going to sort it by forest name as well. And then on the second tab here, we have some options about how it zooms and crops to each feature. By default, it does best fit, and it does 125% of what it needs to fit the feature on the page. I'm going to change it to 110% so that we're zoomed in, but the features aren't going all the way to the edge of the map document. And then I'll click OK, and it does some work, and then it immediately zooms me to the first page here, which is Angeles National Forest. One other thing I want you to notice that happened when we switched to Data-Driven Pages here and when we switched to Angeles National Forest is that these watershed boundaries came on. So this map has scale-dependent rendering set on some of its layers, and that's a really great use of Data-Driven Pages. So when we have that overview like we just had, you can't see as much detail because these watershed boundaries would be a lot of clutter. But with scale-dependent rendering, we can turn them on so that each page of the map book can display as much information as possible and have a lot higher of detail. And in my map view here, I can just cycle through each data-driven page by clicking the next arrows. And those other ones there didn't have any fish range on it, but now we do have fish on these lands here. And we have a lot more information because we have these boundaries here. So we can see exactly where in the forest they are, and we can see the forest boundaries a lot more cleanly. Certainly, it's still not perfect, but as far as automation goes, this is a very good tool for quickly putting out a lot of maps. So one other thing I can do is I can add text to my map indicating which data-driven page we're on. So in this case, this isn't just the whole state's hardhead distribution by Huck 12, that's a fish species hardhead anymore. It's hardhead distribution by Huck 12 for El Dorado National Forest. So we might want to indicate that in some way. And we have dynamic text just like we could get through here. And we can get them all down here, but the Data-Driven Pages toolbar gives us quick access to those. So I can add the data-driven page name here. And it gave me a little text element here, and it's tiny, so I'll move it down here. And I can double click it and bring it up just like any text, and we can see that it's just another dynamic property tag here, and it'll get populated by ArcGIS for whatever page we're on. And I can just put National Forest after it so that it'll say El Dorado National Forest now. And let me just zoom in onto that part of the page so that we can see what happens when I change Data-Driven Pages. Just like it changes up here, it updates down here. So that's a really powerful tool too, because you can add more information for the viewer to know what they're looking at that point. In the real world, I'd probably update it into the title, and I'd probably change the styling to match a lot more, but for this example, this is fine. So let's go back out to the whole map. So this is all nice for viewing in ArcGIS, but how do I create the map book to share with other people? Well, it's really simple too. All I have to do is use the export tools that we already know how to use. So if I go to File, Export Map, the export dialog comes up, and when we have data-driven pages enabled in a map, we get a separate tab for the pages in our PDF export option. And I can select to export just the current page, or all pages, or a page range, and then I can choose to export them as one PDF file, so like a single booklet I can send, or multiple PDF files where they're named by their page name or their page index. So each page is exported as a separate PDF. I'm going to choose single PDF file, and we're just going to export a few pages here. We're going to export pages 3 to 6 just to keep it speedy, and I'll overwrite this PDF here, and I'll click Save. And it renders each one separately here, and it'll take longer when you're using actual map export options and using higher resolution. But overall, it's fast enough. And it's done now. And if I bring up the PDF, we can see that we get the output for each page here. So I have the El Dorado National Forest version here, and that text is populated here. And then the next one is for Inyo National Forest, also populated down here. And then Klamath National Forest and Lassen National Forest. And not all of them had scale dependent rendering kicking in because they weren't all zoomed in far enough. But overall, everything did update as expected. That's almost all there is to using data-driven pages. They're very useful when you need to convey lots of information about lots of detail areas and you have a large area of interest. So any type of project you can think of that matches that description could get use out of data-driven pages. And that's it for this lesson. In this lesson, I showed you how to use data-driven pages to create detailed map books covering large areas. I hope you're able to find some good uses for the tool. See you next time.